Garry Kasparov was world champion from 1985 to 2000 until he was dethroned by Vishwanand Anand. And in this game, he loses in only 7 moves. He's widely regarded as one of the only contesters to Magnus Carlsen's best player of all time title. In this game, I don't know. He just lost in 7 moves, so it's pretty crazy. So he plays this against Grandmaster Shakhriyar Mamardov. He played this maybe like a couple years ago, 2021 maybe. It was a blitz match, and Mamardov with the white pieces starts off with d4. Kasparov responds with d5. He plays into a Queen's Gambit accepted. Mamardov plays e3. It's very common to see other knight c3 variations or knight f3. Knight f3 is one of the more common ones, but Mamardov chooses e3. And then Kasparov plays e5. E5 is like not the most popular move. It's a move, but it's more common to see knight f6, maybe bishop out, but e5 is still a good move. e6 is also a very good move, but e5. Now, if you take on e5, it's not very great for white after queen d1 and just knight c6. You got doubled pawns. This knight attacking this. Black is just gonna comfortably develop. So, and you've got double pawns in the center, which isn't great. So you shouldn't take on e5. And what we have is knight f3 attacking it with the knight. If the knight takes, it's not so clear as to what to do. Takes on d4, and now if you taking on d4 with the pawn is not horrible, but then black can comfortably defend, and I mean black is up a pawn. So we take on c4 instead, not on d4, on c4, because c4 is more valuable. Because once the bishop's on c4, it gets to target this f7 pawn. Now Garry's still up 1 pawn because he basically played into a gambit, knight f6, and this is where things kind of go wrong. After queen b3, he targets this f7 pawn. Now what black should do is go bishop e6. It's not actually dropping this pawn. It looks like this rook is trapped, but you can simply take on c4, and if they take the rook, then there's bishop b4, and a whole lot of bad stuff are happening to this white king, and the computer evaluates as better for black. And if you take here, it looks like you're losing a pawn, but I mean, you're not really losing because don't forget that Mamardov sacrificed a pawn in the opening, so material's equal, and it's not horrible. But unfortunately, Garry fails to realize this, doesn't play bishop e6, instead blunders with queen to e7. And now it's a tough move to find. It's not an attacking move. It's just a very silent killer move. You're welcome to find it if you want to pause the video. It's castles. And here Garry Kasparov actually resigned. Now, most people probably shouldn't resign after castles. It's a very silent move. But what it prepares is to take on d4 and then pin the queen with rook e1. For example, if you do nothing, I take on d4. And guess what? This is coming, and it's really hard to defend. If you can't really try bishop e6 because then this pawn falls to a fork, and black's only resource is d3, making sure this e-file cannot be opened. And taking this is not good because then you take your eye off the f7 pawn. But now you can just go knight g5, and it's tough. It's really impossible to defend this. You can't go bishop e6 because you'll take with the knight, and if you take back, then I take on b7, and this rook is gonna die. And if you try, and the best move here, computer, is h6, and this is absolutely crazy because you're giving up this f7 pawn, and it's very uncomfortable to play this. Bishop f7, the king has to move. This is just a horrible position for Kasparov to be in. This king is getting swarmed, it can't castle. Meanwhile, white is going to get their rook in. And I mean, it's not clear why Kasparov would resign in castles at first sight, but I hope this gives you some insight on this short little game. But yeah, it's pretty crazy to see someone like Garry Kasparov lose in only 7 moves.